Over the last 2 months, tens of thousands of people have died tragically in Ukraine, some fighting for their country and others just fighting to stay alive. Throughout history, countless people have died for their family, for their country, for their faith, or for some ideal or cause, worthily and nobly. So what makes the death of one man, Jesus of Nazareth, nearly 2,000 years ago on the other side of the world, so worthy of remembrance that we still celebrate Good Friday in his honour each and every year? Well, it's not the manner of his death. Indeed, brutal and torturous though it was, what the Roman soldiers did to Jesus, they did to 2 other people the same day, and to many others before and after. No, our focus is not on what was done to Jesus, but what Jesus himself did. And what Jesus did was bring an intentionality to his death that made his death a sacrifice, that he offered his life as sacrifice through his death to his Father in heaven on behalf of all humanity. Let me say it again, unpack that, because it's a dense statement. That Jesus offered his life through his death on the cross, offered his life in sacrifice to God the Father on behalf of all humanity. So what does that mean? Well, throughout Jesus' ministry, Jesus presented a bold new vision of who God is, God as a loving, merciful Father, which infuriated both the religious leaders, but by gaining such a following, also became a threat to the political leaders. And so a number of times throughout the gospel we hear the plot against Jesus develop, but Jesus avoids arrest and capture until he finally allows himself to be in Jerusalem. When Jesus enters into Jerusalem on that first Palm Sunday on a donkey, he is drawing attention to himself and really allowing himself to make his last stand in the holy city. Jesus then allows himself to be arrested. He allows himself to be convicted. Jesus offers no defense at his own trial, but he allows himself to die. And while the soldiers thought that they were executing a common criminal, what Jesus was doing was sacrificial. And Jesus did that by the intentionality he brought to the Last Supper the night before. That Jesus, rather than reenacting something which had already happened, pre-enacted his death on the cross in the supper by giving the bread to his disciples as his body broken and the wine to his disciples as his blood poured out for them. And the disciples may well have been quite confused by what that all meant. But perhaps the next day when they saw Jesus' body broken on the cross and his blood pouring out, they may have understood the connection which only Jesus himself fully understood that night, that Jesus was indeed offering his life in sacrifice, intentionally, and using language that his Jewish hearers at the time would understand better than you and I do today. Jesus also used the language of covenant, saying, "This blood is my new covenant." It's a new covenant between God and humanity made in my blood. Just as there was an Old Testament covenant between God and the people of Israel, this is the new covenant which Jesus was sealing through his death, through his blood on the cross. Now, how can that happen? How can one person offer their life in sacrifice for all humanity? Many people offer themselves as a martyr for a cause. Indeed, throughout history that has happened. But Jesus could do what you and I could not do, because Jesus was not just one man dying 2,000 years ago. He was the divine Son of God, the Word made flesh dwelling among us, fully human as well as fully divine. So he was able to choose to take on humanity, and he was able to choose then to offer his life for all humanity, to God, his loving Father, whom he had developed such an intimate relationship with, that his humanity was so perfected that his divinity shone through his humanity. And so Jesus could offer his life to the Father on the cross. Now at that time, as Jesus died, his disciples probably didn't understand the ramification of his sacrifice. They wouldn't know whether God the Father had accepted his sacrifice, but they would find out 3 days later on that first Easter morning.